Business Foundations for Mums with me, Kate Butcher, is the podcast to listen to if you are a mum who is ready to launch your business, not sure where to start, or wanting to turn that sideline into something more serious. It will be full of practical tips, mindset advice, and inspirational and honest interviews with mums who are juggling business and motherhood, supporting mums in business to turn your dream into a reality. Hello, and welcome back to the Business Foundations for Mums podcast. It's been a while, hasn't it? So I am coming back today to talk about vulnerability and connection, and it's really related to me bringing the podcast back today. I'm going to be really honest. I had absolutely no intention of pausing the podcast back in November when it paused. It purely and simply was a case of life got really busy. And that happens sometimes, doesn't it? Work got really busy. And it was around that time that I just realized I was completely overwhelmed with everything that was going on. The next podcast was due out the following week. I hadn't recorded anything. My brain was completely overloaded and I really couldn't think of what to talk about. I couldn't come up with an idea of what I wanted to talk about. I didn't have any guests booked in my usual pipeline. I was quite good usually at making sure that I had guests booked in plenty of time in advance. And for the last few weeks, I just hadn't booked anyone in. And I didn't have anything lined up for the podcast and it didn't go out. And then the next week, it didn't go out. And things were really chaotic for me. Things were really over the top for me, overwhelming for me. So at that point, I took a step back and I decided that I really needed to rethink my business. I really needed to rethink how much I was committing to. And that was the point that I decided that I needed to reduce the number of clients that I was working with. So that was what I did. I reduced the number of clients that I had in my virtual assistant business. I kept my two biggest clients on and reduced the rest down. And it takes quite a lot of work, actually, the handovers and the winding things up to make sure that your clients have everything they need when you've finished. So there was quite a big push of work through November and December whilst I was doing that. And the overwhelm continued. And of course, Christmas and all the overwhelm that goes with that in family life when you've got children particularly. And the new year came around and I had every intention of getting back on the case and getting the podcast up and running again. And time has ticked away from me. Things have definitely improved in terms of the time that I have available. But I've really been focusing on working with a mentor and doing some other things within my business to really start to grow the business foundations for mums side of things whilst reducing the amount of work that I'm doing in my VA business. And even this week, I made the big decision to I say this week, it's this week when I'm recording, but this episode isn't going to go out for a couple of weeks. But I made the big decision to reduce my client load yet further. I felt really, really sad about letting another client go, but the amount of work that I was having to do was just becoming too much. And it meant that I really couldn't pursue the side of the business that I really love and really want to do. And that is helping and supporting and working with mums to grow their businesses from the beginning, where they are lacking confidence, where they are maybe having a bit of a side hustle going on, and they really want to make it something bigger that they can start to take on full time, growing all those really basic foundations and skills that you need to make sure that you can make your business sustainable, long-term, and financially viable. So that brings me to now. And as things are starting to become less overwhelming, the amount of work is starting to reduce. There's still a lot to do. There's always a lot to do. When you've got a business, when you're a mum, there's going to be huge amounts to do in both of those roles. But it definitely has got to the point where I thought, I just need to do it. I just need to bite the bullet, get some interviews recorded, get the podcast back up and running. So that is what I'm doing. So here I am. And why am I telling you this? Why have I told you that I didn't intentionally stop the podcast? Why am I telling you about that overwhelm that I felt? The reason is because I feel it's really important to be authentic. I feel it's really important to be vulnerable. I feel it's really important to share vulnerability when you're feeling it. One, it makes it feel better for myself when I share it. But two, that authenticity and that vulnerability, that is all about connection. And that's what helps people to connect with you, because we all go through similar struggles. We all hit patches of overwhelm at times. We all feel vulnerable at times. And sharing that is something that will help to build the connection between myself and others who are feeling a similar way for whatever reason. They may have other reasons for feeling overwhelmed, but sharing that vulnerability and sharing that is such an important part of connection, which brings me on to connection. The reason that connection is so important to me, I've done some work in the past with some coaches, and connection is something that always comes out as a core value of mine. One of my top 3 values. If anything, it's my number 1 value, my top value. Connecting with other people, human connection, meeting people. I always prefer to meet people face to face if I can, rather than on a Zoom meeting. If I can't meet them face to face, I absolutely prefer a Zoom meeting where I can see your face rather than on a phone call. I prefer a voice note to a written message, anything that helps with that human connection, that really helps me to get to know the person that I'm talking to and that they're human. And none of us are perfect. It's taken me a long time, a very long time, to realize that I don't need to be perfect, to really push past that need for perfection in myself. That thought that I'm not going to let my content go out unless it's absolutely perfect. So vulnerability and connection, absolutely massive, absolutely really, really important. And that is why I've decided now is the time to bring the podcast back, to talk about connection, to talk about vulnerability, and to kick the relaunch of the podcast off with a really important topic to me. So as I said, connection, my number 1 value. That's why this is the topic that I am talking about now on the relaunch of the podcast. So that brings me on to connection again. I would love to hear from any mums out there who are starting their businesses, starting a side hustle, have a side hustle and want to make it something more serious. Connect with me, make those connections. Connections are the way that we grow our businesses, creating relationships, building relationships with our audience, with our clients. That is how we grow our businesses. And I would love to connect a little bit more with some of my audience. Reach out on social media, say hello. Business Foundations for Mums is here as the podcast, which you can subscribe to and listen to. But I have social media accounts for Business Foundations for Mums on Facebook and on Instagram. We have a group on Facebook as well. And we also have the membership. But if you would like to have a chat about doing some more intense work with me, one-to-one work, I have a one-to-one program available for mums who really want to take their business to the next level, make it something that is financially viable and successful and has all the right foundations in place. So connect with me. I would love to connect with as many mums as I can connect with. As I said, I really love that connection, talking to people, getting to know people. That's what it's all about. Certainly for me, that's what it's all about. And we have lots of interesting new guests lined up as well. When this goes out, I will have recorded the next 2 interviews that are due to go out as well. And there will obviously be my own episodes in there as well. And I have another interview lined up in the pipeline and hopefully some more soon. So again, if you're interested in being interviewed on the podcast, please shout about it. Let me know about it. Let me know if you would like to be interviewed and we can connect on the podcast. I'm going to leave it there for today, but please be assured we've got some amazing guests coming up. And I'm also going to be doing a short mini series, not only interviewing inspiring mums who have really successful businesses already, although that will be the next few episodes, but there will also be a mini series coming up, which will be 5 interviews with mums who are in the really early stages of their business. And it's talking to them about the challenges, about the mindset struggles that they go through in that stage, about what they feel they don't know, what they want to know, what they need to know. All of those things that could very well be going through your mind if you're a mum in the early stages of business. So listen out for those because they are going to be really interesting. I will be back soon with another episode. Thank Thank you for joining us here at Business Foundations for Mums. You can find all of our episodes, show notes and blog posts at businessfoundationsformums.co.uk, and you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook.